Each time it commenced in an utterly identical manner, the gray sky and the drizzling rain moistening the earth, a garden where nothing thrived, a scene that greeted the protagonist upon her return to the beginning of the novel. And now, the young lady has returned to the first page of the book, in which she found herself imprisoned, during the year of her 17th anniversary. After the 10th reincarnation, returning to the outset, Karen Hayers still clung to the hope of returning to her own world. However, by the 20th occurrence, she pondered thoughts of death. By the 30th, she had practically grown accustomed to her confinement within the narrative, and in the subsequent 5 instances, she succumbed entirely to despair. After undergoing numerous transformations within the novel, the main heroine had even forgotten her true name, and the fictional world crafted by the author seemed a veritable prison to her. Nancy, the personal chambermaid of the young lady, actively roused her on the day of her birth, portending a splendid day for the mistress. Yet it was not the birthday of the main heroine, it was the celebration of a character in whose body she had found herself, dwelling there for 117 years. The novel was a popular novella in the contemporary world, recounting the tale of Karen Hayers, the daughter of a modest lord who dreamed of encountering her true love. According to the plot, it was precisely because of her aspiration that the young lady broke off her engagement with the odious suitor, Dulan. Soon thereafter, having become the chambermaid of a young lady from a very affluent family, enduring the insults and torments that the unfortunate lady heaped upon her, the main heroine of the novel finally met her love. She managed to fulfill her cherished dream, to encounter the love of her entire life, Raymond Sears, with whom she found her blissful conclusion. However, at the culmination of the story, in the final chapter, it was stated that the heroine was killed by means of alcohol poisoning. A year ago, she had already attempted to adhere to the plot, trusting her betrothed, and was ultimately slain. No matter what the young lady attempted throughout the course of events, no matter whom she conversed with, she inevitably perished in the end and returned to the beginning. This time, it was already her 100th attempt to escape from the tale. Leisurely, Karen was being prepared for the forthcoming event, and as her hair was being coiffed, the young lady reminisced about how, in one of her past lives, she had been killed by that very personal chambermaid. During the celebration ceremony of her birthday, she predictably encountered her detested suitor, and while pondering a new escape plan from the manuscript, she suddenly concluded that, perhaps, the salvation of her life depended on Dulan's love. The celebration of the Lord's daughter's birthday unfolded precisely like the previous 116 times. Same people, same music, same guests. This time, the young lady resolved to try changing everything through her suitor. Thus, she led him away from the event, seeking solitude. She was prepared to make any possible sacrifices in order to be saved from the novel. Shortly after their intimate encounter, the main heroine, together with her suitor, returned to the banquet hall. They still had 3 more dances to share. Meanwhile, the aristocrats gathered at the ceremony whispered to one another, discussing the couple, uttering unpleasant things about the suitor and the lord's daughter. The young lady was taken aback by the lack of any reaction from the young man. It seemed he was capable of remaining silent in the face of any vile remarks directed at him. Unexpectedly, Dulan stumbled during the dance and accidentally bumped into a waiter at the festivities. The youth fell to the floor, and the other guests began to mock. Ignoring the others, the main heroine extended her hand to the young man, attempting to help him despite the situation that had unfolded between them. To her surprise, the suitor composed himself and managed the situation independently, then continued the dance without a trace of pride on his face. The first alteration of the plot had just occurred. Previously, the young man would leave the event after the fall, not forgetting to vent his anger on the servants, but now, for the first time, he remained. This made the young lady happier. She hoped that she could change other events of the plot as well. For 100 years now, the main heroine had resided within the body of the novel's protagonist, a red-haired beauty named Karen Hayers. During this time, she had deduced 3 fundamental rules of her entrapment in the story. The first one stating that the period allotted to her was exactly 1 year from her initial appearance in the garden. The second rule narrates that no matter what happens during this year, in the end, the main heroine perishes, without exception. The third rule, on the other hand, carries the peculiarity that upon returning to the beginning, a golden coin engraved with the number of attempts is held in the girl's mouth. Karen hoped to avoid these rules by violating the plot. For this purpose, she intentionally engaged in foolish acts. She gained weight, escaped to other lands, attempted to end her life, however, nothing changed. Now, contemplating how to escape from the novel, the main heroine pondered revenge, to retaliate against all the tormentors who had killed her throughout countless attempts. In her 48th life, the girl perished due to a wild boar's bite. Her suitor, upon her refusal to marry him, declined to treat her, and thus she died from infection a year later. In her 53rd life, a rival within the plot poured tar on the unfortunate girl as a seduction tactic, and she succumbed to the consequences of burns a year later. In her 18th life, the father of the rival, Furtick Evans, arrived on the day of the girl's wedding ceremony and brutally hacked her to death with a blunt axe, blaming her for robbing his daughter of the love of her life. Over the course of 100 years, the main heroine was killed 100 times, and the number of people who deserved revenge was innumerable. After some reflection, Karen decided that seeking revenge on everyone was a good way to attempt to escape the world of the novella. If before she believed that love changed a person, she now realized that death does, she resolved to become the killer of the novel. On the way to Lord Hayer's estate, the moneylender Furtick Evans' horse broke its leg, forcing him and his daughter to proceed on foot. During the journey to the estate, the man recounted to his daughter all the positive aspects of these lands. The quality of the gardens was exquisite, there were only a few local residents, and accordingly, the labor prices were low. The father considered it an ideal territory for his daughter's rule. She, however, did not particularly desire such a fate, but the thought that it would be useful for her marriage to Raymond Searles compelled her to agree. First and foremost, the members of the Evans family arrived at the small town's church, where they engaged in dialogue with the Lord. The conversation of the moneylender's daughter did not appear interesting to her. Therefore, she turned her attention to the church's interior, which seemed exceedingly tedious to her. Conversations of other people about the exquisite beauty distracted her from her musings. Isella resolved to find out precisely what was being discussed. Making her way through the crowd of admiring peasants, the young woman beheld the flawlessly beautiful main heroine. Seated alone on a bench, she listened to the sermons of her betrothed. The priest, even clad in modest attire, she could not conceal her incomparable beauty. The girl's beauty stirred envy in the fiancé of the novel's main hero. She begrudged her captivating appearance. After the conclusion of the daytime service in the temple, Karen felt a slight despair. It seemed to her that a God capable of helping her simply did not exist. Unintentionally, her words reached her fiancé, and it appeared he was displeased with the remarks of others. Their conversation was interrupted by the moneylender's daughter, who introduced herself to the main heroine with a feigned smile. Upon learning that the daughter of the lord of these lands was soon to marry the priest standing beside her, the girl barely concealed her hypocrisy, experiencing joy over the fate intended for the beauty. However, the main heroine did not react to her words. They did not affect her in any way. She was accustomed to Isella's rudeness and acerbity. Unexpectedly, as she looked at her interlocutor's body, Karen imagined it hanging. She deemed such a death perfect for such a loathsome individual. The piercing gaze of the main heroine did not go unnoticed. The girl concluded that the beauty's attention was drawn to the necklace around her neck, prompting her to immediately boast about it to the others. The child of the Evans family declared that it was given to her by the novel's main hero, her future betrothed. It was evident that she was infatuated with him. The main heroine envisioned choking the girl with that necklace. It would be better if it were made of piano strings. Soon, she decided that she would undoubtedly adorn the lifeless body of Isella with it. As the day drew to a close, Karen walked with a newfound happiness for the first time. Her steps resembled the dance of a goddess of spring, and her smile illuminated the faces of the people around her. The cause of her joy was her first accomplished murder. Soon, the moneylender's daughter's necklace was lost, and as a result, the young woman caused a scandal. She ravaged the entire room in the lord's estate and stirred up turmoil among the servants. The personal attendant of the main heroine made the imprudent mistake of boldly responding to the visiting guest, resulting in receiving a slap to her face and accusations of theft from Isella. The girl relied on Nancy's heritage. She was a gypsy, and thus, based on stereotypes, she assumed the accusation was appropriate. The daughter of the local lord took notice of the commotion. She arrived in the midst of the scandal. Upon learning the specifics of the incident from the guest, the main heroine, of course, believed in the innocence of her servant. She promised to entrust the search for the ornament to the inhabitants of the house. All the servants of this household looked disapprovingly at the moneylender's daughter. They condemned her for such abhorrent behavior. Before leaving the girls' chambers, Karen hastened to justify Nancy's innocence in the theft of the necklace. Until the day's end, all the estate staff searched everywhere for Isella's lost adornment, but they were unable to find it. The girl's impatience and anger increased with each passing minute. She openly vexed her father with her actions. He was vexed that his daughter behaved so recklessly, and even managing to lose the gift given by her betrothed, caused the servants of the Lord to suffer, who graciously welcomed her into their home. She justified her actions by claiming that the ornament was a very significant gift for her. She valued it as much as the attention of her future spouse, as she loved him madly. Raymond Sirtz was the second son of the fallen baron and also a war hero and an excellent marksman. For this reason, according to the Evans Monelender's opinion, he could pursue better candidates for the role of his wife than his daughter. However, as long as the man owed something to their family, it was unlikely that he would act in such a manner. The panicked girl, distraught over the loss of the ornament, entered her chambers and trembled in horror. The entire room was covered in pools of blood, and on the bed lay the severed head of the maid Nancy and the lost necklace. It was this maid who was recently threatened by the Monelender's daughter, and now, stained in her blood, she understood that she would be accused of the unfortunate girl's murder. Isela rushed away from the bedroom, terrified by what she had seen, her mind consumed by one thought: she was not guilty. In the corridor, she happened to encounter the Lord's daughter, who appeared extremely astonished by the guest's behavior. Naturally, the frightened Monelender's daughter was convinced that if the main heroine learned of what had happened, she would immediately accuse her of her servant's murder, something she couldn't bear to imagine. Meanwhile, the young woman herself noticed that the guest was completely splattered with blood. The panicking accused couldn't comprehend how she could justify the stains on her dress. Unexpectedly, Karen offered to escort her to her chambers. She decided to help the guest. The main heroine falsely speculated that the bloodstains were the result of an unexpectedly early onset of menstruation. Thus, she assisted the lady in providing an explanation. Inside the Lord's daughter's chambers, the mistress of these lands helped the girl change her attire, all the while expressing her willingness to assist the visitor. Relying on the kindness of her savior, Isela decided to recount the events. She revealed what she had witnessed in her room, something shocking. Though she tried not to delve into the details, it seemed the main heroine already knew everything. The girl falsely conjectured that the guest had seen apparitions in their old manor. Furthermore, she explained that she, too, sometimes experienced hallucinations within the estate. It was something to get accustomed to. Despite the reality of what was happening, the Monelender's daughter chose to believe the girl's words. She herself desired it to be merely an illusion. To confirm the falsity of the situation, she asked Karen to accompany her to her own bedroom, and she agreed. Upon opening the doors to the chambers, both of them confirmed the truth of the main heroine's words. The bedroom was clean, and instead of the maid's head, there lay a man's hat, with the necklace still in its place. The sight greatly pleased the guest. She was relieved to confirm the illusion. In contrast, the main heroine experienced shock, and genuine horror was evident on her face. Soon, alone with her thoughts, Karen pondered only one question: where had the maid's body disappeared to? Shortly before the incident, the young woman utilized a paralyzing poison to immobilize and ultimately kill her maid. As the maid had taken a week-long leave, her absence would go unnoticed. In the next instant, having finished expounding on the precarious situation with Nancy, the main heroine hastened to strangle her. At this moment, she was incredibly enraged by the disappearance of the servant's body from the guest's chambers. According to the killer's plan, upon entering the room, Isela was meant to witness the same horrifying scene and be driven to madness by fear. However, someone not only deprived her of that opportunity by removing the body but also thoroughly cleaned all the rooms, leaving no trace of the murder. Karen was disappointed that the rival's life came to such an abrupt and unwelcome end, ruining the daughter of the Lord's entire interests. Unexpectedly, she concluded that the entire maid's murder must have been a figment of her own imagination. The young woman found herself distraught by the potential falsehood of her actions. She wept at the thought that the pleasure derived from the murder could have been illusory. In her anger, the Lord's daughter struck the floor with great force, severely injuring her hand. Subsequently, she pondered the mistakes made during the execution of her revenge plan against the visiting guest. Karen didn't know what to do next. She resolved to test the possibility of murder on someone else. Leaving her chambers, the young woman accidentally encountered the servant, Bowen. He noticed the injured hand of his mistress and displayed great concern. Unexpectedly, the conversation between the two was interrupted by the main heroine's fiancé. He called her clumsy and silently displayed jealousy toward the servant's actions. Later, the young woman desired to play the harpsichord, but before doing so, she requested a healing ointment from Dulan to treat her hand injury. The young man objected to such independent actions by the main heroine. Therefore, expressing his concern, he offered his assistance. Shortly after, he proceeded to tend to the girl's wound. The daughter of the Lord contemplated how her relationship with her fiancé had improved since their recent intimacy, and how these events were shaping her life. Breaking free from her reverie, the daughter of the Lord exerted her efforts to unsettle her fiancé. She aimed to captivate his emotions so that he would subsequently fight alongside her and the main hero. The girl's behavior had the desired effect, and the emotionally charged young man drew his bride into a passionate kiss. During the union of the future couple, Karen pondered the notion that Doolin should fall in love with her before meeting his demise at her own hands. Later, as planned, she played the harpsichord while the visiting guest continued to boast about the necklace gifted by the novel's main hero. Although the girl received lavish presents from the renowned war hero, it was not a promise of marriage. Contemplating this, the mistress of the estate utterly failed to comprehend Isella's naivety. As the daughter of a moneylender herself, she could not fathom the reasons for her guest's lack of aspiration. Unexpectedly, the guest inquired as to why Karen chose to play the harpsichord while others had long transitioned to the piano. The main heroine explained her preference primarily due to the convenience it offered her in playing, thus declining the unexpected suggestion from her interlocutor to receive a piano as a gift. In gratitude for the recent nocturnal assistance from the landlady, the young woman desired to express her appreciation through a gift, but it proved unattainable. Suddenly, Isella's attention was drawn to the absence of her personal maid. Through a series of probing questions, shocking details of the unfolding situation were revealed to Karen. She learned that the guest had seen the maid's severed head. However, according to the girl's own plan, the maid's head was not meant to be severed during the murder. Now, all her doubts dissipated. Someone truly covered up the murder scene for her and even dismembered the unfortunate victim's body. The information about the maid's leave had caused great anxiety for the moneylender's daughter. She found it hard to believe the main heroine's words and thus searched for a catch in the unfolding situation, likely due to a previous experience of intense fear. Since arriving at the estate, the young woman had become exceedingly fearful and nervous, flinching at every sound within the Lord's house. Suddenly, a maid brought her a letter from her beloved military officer, and she hastened to read it. Several days later, the main heroine strolled through the city with her new personal maid, Donna. Simultaneously, the girl contemplated the changes in the novel's plot that she had managed to influence. Additionally, she was intrigued by the mysterious individual who had concealed Nancy's body. Deciding to change the plot further, she proposed going to the circus since she had never been there before, always opting for the theater in such instances. While shopping at the clothing salon, Karen engaged in conversation with her new maid about various trifles. They became friends due to their similar ages. Suddenly, Donna decided to choose a gift for the main heroine's former teacher, a secondary character unknown to the girl as they had just appeared in the storyline. The introduction of Dyer into the story already delighted the Lord's daughter. She rejoiced at any changes in the novel. Soon, the circus performance began, and the girls hurried to take their seats to start watching the anticipated show. The main heroine was more interested in the teacher than the circus outing. She eagerly awaited their encounter. During the performance, Karen observed the aerial acrobats. They reminded her of her own falls. But unlike the circus performers, no one caught her. She attempted to dismiss unnecessary thoughts and enjoy the show, so she ordered a beer. Unexpectedly, during the performance, an exotic creature, a majestic elephant, was brought out, a rarity for these parts. The main heroine had never seen such a magnificent and powerful being before, and thus, she was captivated. During the elephant act, it skillfully executed the necessary tricks. However, the trainer seemed dissatisfied and hastily punished the unfortunate animal with a whip. Witnessing such horrific torture inflicted upon such a mighty creature, the girl immediately lost interest in the performance. She remembered that the novel's plot was inflicting similar havoc on her own life, just as the man did with the elephant. Everyone, except the Lord's daughter herself, found amusement in the mistreatment of the animal. She equated herself to it, making the gleeful laughter of the others repugnant to her. As if on purpose, the main heroine shattered her glass of beer. The colossal creature reacted instantly, causing the show to come to an abrupt halt. Left in a state of profound disappointment from what she had witnessed, the girl hurriedly requested to leave the circus before the performance concluded. While they tried to persuade her to stay and continue the merriment, Karen noticed that the elephant responded to the sparkle of her earrings. She conceived a cunning plan and attempted to involve the circus curiosity in it. It seemed the elephant understood the girl, for in the next moment, it broke free from the chains of the trainer's supervision and killed him, trampling him underfoot. The public murder sent the crowd of spectators into a panic, and they hurriedly fled from the circus. The main heroine, however, finally began to appreciate the performance. She rejoiced that the elephant managed to escape its own hell and administer justice. Unexpectedly, the savage beast headed towards the Lord's daughter. It appeared that it wanted to kill her as well. In the final moments before her demise, the girl was saved by a shot fired by the novel's main hero. He arrived in the nick of time and slew the elephant with his weapon. The death of the animal greatly incensed the girl. She herself had no qualms about perishing at its hands. The main heroine hastened to flee the scene of the elephant's killing, as she had no desire for a personal encounter with Raymond. Due to the impending meeting with the man, the girl wanted to spend this day with her teacher. She recalled the location of her house from the maid's account. The Lord's daughter resolved to do everything possible to alter this day in history. She possessed a resolute determination. Karen believed she had every chance since she had already succeeded in changing many things. The maid, her relationship with the fiancé, and even encountering a new and surviving its attack. As she approached the desolate street of the city, the main heroine remembered that it was usually on this street that danger threatened her. Yet now, she did not worry, for she had already met her savior before and thus thought that such a thing would not recur. Suddenly, two bandits blocked her path. It was precisely them whom the girl had feared before. The men began to aggressively accost the Lord's daughter, attempting to engage in conversation. Meanwhile, Karen pondered that she had erred and the plot once again imposed its rules upon her life. Unexpectedly, the bandits recognized in the girl the daughter of a renowned lord of these lands. Due to this realization, they decided to release her alive, albeit with certain conditions. They tried to rob the main heroine, however, she possessed nothing, which greatly enraged the men. Unable to withstand the attacks, the girl divulged all the information she knew about each of the bandits crossing her path. She remembered them from past lives. This shocked the two men, and therefore they threatened to kill her. This did not frighten Karen, for she remembered that according to the plot, the main hero of the novel should appear at this moment and save her. Unexpectedly, the main heroine was stabbed with a knife. She was horrified by such a situation, as it deviated entirely from the plot. Following this, the men decided to finish off the girl entirely. In her attempts to escape, she screamed the name of the main hero. In the moment before death, for the second time that day, the war hero saves the unfortunate girl. He shoots one of the attackers in the head. For 100 years now, Raymond has fallen in love with the main heroine at first sight, and the girl believes that this time was no exception. The man was a knight, bringing peace to ordinary people, yet the chivalrous norms of the aristocracy were completely foreign to him, as he did not consider sniper work worthy of respect. After successfully completing the first task, Raymond was called a coward and criticized in every way, just as subsequent victories over his opponents were met with the same scrutiny. He personally killed over 300 enemy soldiers in the war and eventually became a hero of the entire kingdom. He was hailed as a skilled marksman. Due to his rapid successes, rumors spread that he had forged a pact with dark forces. Some admired him while others envied him. His personal attendant, however, held a different view. For him, the man was neither wicked nor cunning. On the contrary, he exuded simplicity and compassion, even though the marksman preferred to be alone. Now, the man saves the main heroine, but only his attendant knows that it was likely his master who intentionally allowed the girl to be wounded. In the carriage on the way home, the Lord's daughter felt terrible. Thanks to her luck in the corset, the wound was not deep and her life was not in danger. However, despite the safety of the situation, Karen experienced excruciating pain from the wound. During the journey, the main hero of the novel asked extremely impolite questions to the girl, as if entirely unaware of how to conduct himself. This irritated the Lord's daughter and shocked the others. And yet, the main heroine endeavored to respond to the questions. She revealed that she had enjoyed the stroll despite the fact that she had narrowly escaped death twice. On the other hand, the girl's personal attendant considered such a fateful encounter between the great marksman and the Lord's daughter as destiny. By their demeanor, it was evident that they believed in love more than in death. Unexpectedly, the man cast an extremely suspicious glance at the girl. It puzzled him that the main heroine showed no fear or surprise at the fact that her life had been threatened twice. The following morning, anxious about the meeting with her beloved, the moneylender's daughter was overly meticulous in choosing her attire. She desired to present herself in the best possible light before the object of her affection. Soon, the father entered the daughter's chambers. He implored the girl to be calmer, and in response, tears welling in her eyes, she rushed into his embrace. She disclosed the main cause of her distress, the acquaintance between Karen Hayer and her beloved man. Due to the fact that the Lord's daughter was renowned for her angelic beauty, Isella worried about the feelings of the acclaimed war hero. She feared that he would redirect all his interest toward the current mistress of these lands. The moneylender made an effort to explain to his foolish daughter that the primary reason for the man's future marriage to her was not love but rather the cold calculation of high society. He deemed the girl's fears absurd and foolish, as the man would undoubtedly appear foolish in the eyes of others if he were to suddenly break off his engagement for the sake of proposing to a girl already spoken for by another suitor. Furthermore, he noted that his daughter had become excessively emotional, which displeased him. In her defense, the girl recounted the situation with her maid, Nancy, referring to it as a dreadful nightmare. Shortly thereafter, everyone was preparing for the joint dinner of the estate's hosts and guests. During the preparations, the head housemaid reprimanded her mistress and suggested replacing another maid. According to her opinion, Donna was not fulfilling her duties adequately due to her young age. Contrary to this, the main heroine held a different belief and therefore had no intention of allowing the change of chambermaid. All the estate servants wished for their mistress's happiness. They knew that her current suitor, the priest, was entirely unsuitable for her. Therefore, deep in their hearts, they hoped that Karen would end up marrying someone like Raymond. Unexpectedly, the Lord's daughter learned from a woman that her deceased maid had allegedly appeared at the estate and left without bidding farewell to the others. This seemed highly peculiar to the main heroine. She distinctly remembered taking the unfortunate girl's life, and to this day, she remained unaware of who was behind the cover-up of the disappearance. She couldn't comprehend whether this was the work of the novel's plot itself or a specific person acting behind her back. Gathered around a table, the group of people engaged in a banal conversation about the recent incident involving the Lord's daughter. During the conversation, the girl concluded that due to her heightened emotional state at that moment in the carriage, she had exaggerated the man's suspicious reaction. Unexpectedly, the moneylender's daughter interjected into the conversation. She seemed to want to appear knowledgeable, but she lacked the necessary knowledge to do so. While sustaining the dialogue among the adults, she inquired about mundane matters, questioning her beloved and skillfully relaying his answers to someone else. In the end, the question posed by the girl was rendered in a foolish light. She appeared foolish due to the unsatisfactory response that followed. Lady Evans inquired why delectable food is not considered a sin. She herself was labeled a sinner, confusing the sin of gluttony with simply indulging in tasty cuisine. The lord of these lands seemingly endeavored to portray the girl as foolish. Throughout his responses, he deduced that the guest was dissatisfied with the food prepared for their dinner. Following this, the girl attempted to steer the conversation and continued to ramble on about sensible topics in her aimless manner, this time choosing the subject of improving the lives of the local residents. Clearly, she was trying to impress her beloved and present herself favorably in his eyes. However, it seemed to him that it made no difference. Ultimately, the main heroine could no longer tolerate this and intervened in the conversation. Through her arguments, she attempted to admonish and put her rival in her place. With a forced smile, Karen thanked the guests for acknowledging their pious dinner. Shortly thereafter, during the feast, they served the signature dish of these lands, ortolan, a particular delicacy consisting of a finch that is extensively nourished, then drowned in armagnac and roasted. According to the moneylender's daughter, this dish was the epitome of the sixth deadly sin, gluttony. The marksman, upon spotting the presented delicacy, and the girl's reaction to it, couldn't resist the opportunity to jest at her expense. He inquired if the girl would conceal her transgression with a napkin. Naturally, Isella was offended by this, causing her to blush in embarrassment. In an attempt to divert the attention of the gathered people away from his daughter, the moneylender tried to change the subject. He mentioned the recent situation with the chambermaid Nancy and inquired about her current whereabouts. The Lord declared his awareness of the unfortunate misunderstanding regarding the necklace. He revealed that the gypsy woman had personally approached him recently and submitted a resignation letter. This outraged the guest as she believed the maid was simply on leave. Hence, she had hoped to encounter her later to alleviate her fears. Meanwhile, the main heroine was astonished by her father's response. She couldn't fathom whom he had actually seen, or if he was indeed the person who had concealed the body of the murdered chambermaid. While the main heroine feigned false concern over the departure of the servant, her father tried to reassure her, as she had been previously troubled by the unfolding situation. The gentleman graciously decided to taste the presented dish. His taste receptors were immersed in bliss. He confessed that among all the adaptations of the dish he had tried in the past, this was the most delectable, surpassing the others. Above all else, the guest praised the spices employed in the preparation of the meal. She acknowledged their unique and unexpected flavors. Of course, he expressed his desire to savor this dish again before they left the estate. Yet, the Lord hastened to disappoint them, explaining that there were no more finches on these lands. Thus ortolan would not be available in the near future. Then, the indefatigable moneylender expressed his wish to meet the chef, evidently wanting to commend him and, during their conversation, inquire about the seasonings used in the preparation. At that moment, Doolin confessed it was he who had added his own spices during the cooking process. Since he was a physician and possessed extensive knowledge of herbs from his time in the monastery, the young man utilized special spices that aided in the Lord's treatment. As a result, Lady Evan's father slightly altered his opinion of the priest to a more favorable one. Unexpectedly, the evening banquet was interrupted by the master of the estate. He proposed taking a short break before continuing with the dinner. Left alone with her thoughts, Isella was vexed by her situation. She disliked how her wealth, knowledge, and grooming paled in comparison to the angelic beauty of the main heroine. Lady Evans seethed over the fact that she spent far more resources on her hair care and attire than Karen, yet she couldn't compete with her. Even in her childhood, while observing her family and their relationships, the girl believed that her parents did not love each other. For this reason, many years ago, she set a goal for herself to find the love of her life. After meeting the protagonist of the novel, she naively presumed that she could fulfill her dream with him, as the moneylender's daughter loved the man. She didn't care that he didn't immediately fall in love with her. Isella believed in a happy future. Ultimately, the unwavering young woman decided that the marksman would marry her no matter what, as he owed a great debt to the Evans family. Exiting the bedroom, the guest heard familiar voices on the mansion's balcony. The main hero and Karen were engaged in a pleasant conversation. She deemed such an act offensive, as she was convinced that the flirtation between the two young individuals was taking place right in front of her. Unexpectedly, Raymond stated that the main heroine was evidently lying when she claimed to be unfamiliar with him. Half an hour before that, the main heroine stood on the mansion's balcony, pondering her father's words. She was certain that she had killed the maid, but she still doubted whether it was an illusion of her imagination. Recalling the momentarily overlooked details, the girl acknowledged the truth of what had transpired. According to the guest's account, she had only seen Nancy's head, and since there was no reason for her to lie, the murder was not a fabrication. Unexpectedly, the main hero of the novel disturbed the daughter of the Lord. He approached her on the balcony to have a conversation. The girl regarded the marksman as her primary nightmare in the narrative. He had the power to captivate her, but offered no answers. During the casual conversation, the man surprised the Lord's daughter with negative emotions. He assumed that Karen would be pleased to see him. Drawing conclusions from the soldier's words, the girl concluded that the man was excessively self-assured. Unintentionally, she noticed the bride of the main hero of the novel standing behind her, seething with anger as she observed their conversation. For this reason, the main heroine displayed her disgust at every action and word uttered by the man. He, noticing this, was taken aback and soon confessed his suspicions. Raymond thought he was appealing to the girl. Upon hearing the disinterested response from the Lord's daughter, the man suddenly revealed the selfish motive behind the presumed union of the two interlocutors. Subsequently, the main hero accused the girl of falsehood. He was convinced that she knew him previously, as she called him a moment before being injured during a stressful encounter with bandits. The main heroine did not know how to comport herself with the man. She attempted to extricate herself from the situation through the acting of her emotions and a form of provocation. Employing a brilliant response she devised, Karen seized the opportunity. She revealed that she was merely testing the man, as he was her guest's fiancé. In response to her words, the marksman expressed mistrust towards the girl, just as he had disdainfully looked into the eyes of the main heroine in the carriage. The estate's hostess momentarily doubted the man's love for her. He did not appear smitten in the least. The tense atmosphere was disrupted by the betrothed of the Lord's daughter. He was angry with Raymond for his familiar attitude towards his bride. Soon, everyone returned to the evening banquet. Karen pondered the marksman's behavior. The thought that he did not love her did not evoke negative emotions in the girl. It was only his suspicions that troubled her, as they could pose a problem in the future. Now, she planned to kill the main hero of the novel, knowing that it would undoubtedly bring about significant changes to the plot. She harbored doubts until the very end about his feelings towards her character. The following morning, Lady Evans continued to lose her sanity over her anxiety regarding the situation with the murdered maid. She tormented her father with her distress. He wielded the Lord's words during dinner, attempting to quell his foolish daughter. Ultimately, the man divulged that regardless of the truth, they should not meddle in it. Afterwards, he advised the girl to redirect her attention to her beloved. The usurer noticed the daughter's jealousy towards the mistress of the estate. Unintentionally offending Isella, the father tried to calm her down, but to no avail. She fled from her father in tears. Left alone with her thoughts, the girl pondered that if she stayed with her beloved, all her anxieties would cease, but she felt she wouldn't be able to resist the beauty of the main heroine, and the man would choose her instead. She tried to convince herself that her engagement to Raymond was inevitable, even though she herself did not believe in it. Soon, Lady Evans noticed the dress in which she discovered the head of the dismembered maid on that horrifying night. As she looked at it, she suddenly remembered that she hadn't changed her undergarments, and therefore found it strange to see blood on the attire. In the end, she decided that she had no business with the death of the chambermaid at all. She shouldn't interfere in it. Later that night, the main heroine resolved to test once again the possibility of killing within the world of the novel. For this purpose, she prepared a deceased person in the church. Karen wanted to find out if his lifeless body would also disappear, or if it would remain intact. Through such an experiment, she hoped to obtain answers to the questions that had long troubled her. During her examination, the girl dismembered the man's body into small pieces. 6 parts proved to be too simplistic for her. The disappearance of the maid was highly unexpected for the murderer, and thus she needed to verify everything herself. Meanwhile, the guest of the estate was afraid to enter the chambers of the main heroine's betrothed. The young man himself opened the door before her and inquired about her needs. The girl explained that she couldn't sleep peacefully at night, and therefore she greatly desired to obtain herbs from the priest that would assist her with this. Doolan didn't delay in responding. He ushered Lady Evans into his abode and hurried to find the necessary medicine for her. The clergyman handed the girl flowers, from which she prepares an infusion before each sleep. Their calming properties help her relax and soothe her nervous system for a more restful and rejuvenating slumber. This puzzled the guest, as she couldn't understand why the Lord's daughter would consume medicine if she already possessed tranquility. Her fiancé prohibited inquiries or any form of intrusion into his bride's personal affairs. Soon, when the young man was left alone, he resumed reading a book on the Catholic faith, specifically the sections concerning sins and sinners. He delved into the details of who and how should atone for their committed transgressions. Those who made false promises were obliged to offer a bloody sacrifice, a thief to kill a sheep, a betrayer 3 cows, a rapist a mare. At the point where the murderer should make restitution for his heinous deeds, the young man widened his eyes and tore out the manuscript page. He did not wish to know of it, nor did he consider his beloved girl guilty of sin. Clearly deranged, he regarded the main heroine as innocent despite all that had transpired. The priest was aware of Karen's committed murders, thanks to Bowen, his attendant, who seemed to be covering up the lady's tracks, and now he had come to deliver news regarding the girl's behavior. Meanwhile, the main heroine was currently ecstatic that her new victim had also vanished from the initial location. She became curious about the exact manner in which they had disposed of this body, as well as the previous one. During her investigation, the Lord's daughter discovered a secretly hidden lock of hair belonging to the second victim. Since it was found there, she concluded that the cleanup was the work of a specific individual, rather than a plot element of the novel. Furthermore, the girl convinced herself that the murder was not a figment of her imagination. The main heroine speculated that her father was the one concealing the bodies of those she had killed from others. This reassured the almost deranged lady in the midst of the perplexing situation. On the day of her first murder, the main heroine moved the maid's body into the room of the visiting guest when there was no one in the corridor. Subsequently, she made all the necessary preparations and left around 4 o'clock in the evening. Sufficient time had passed before nightfall to sever Nancy's head and dispose of the remaining parts of her body. However, starting precisely at 4 o'clock, the maids were walking through the corridor, and it was impossible to anticipate their movements. Lady Evans discovered the head of the slain maid close to 10 o'clock in the evening. Approximately 10 minutes elapsed as the main heroine comforted the tearful girl. It is impossible to remove the slain body in such a short span of time. Nevertheless, despite the shocking incident that had overwhelmed the Lord's daughter, she has now finally unraveled the mystery of how everything transpired. Before encountering Karen herself in the corridor, the guest mistakenly entered someone else's chambers. Right in the neighboring room, they discovered the hair of the slain maid. It turns out that someone transferred the body of the deceased woman from one room to another before dismembering her. Now, having uncovered the truth, the main heroine was intrigued by the specific person responsible for such an act. Based on her conjectures, he must have been a strong individual knowledgeable about the broken lock in the adjacent room. Only one answer came to Karen Hayer's mind. The cleaner must have been one of the servants who had recently started working in the house. The only thing that continued to perplex the girl was the impeccable cleanliness achieved after the maid's murder. It created the impression that someone had been prepared for the lady of the manor's act of violence. Half a month later, summer arrived, and the inhabitants of the Lord's estate were preparing to participate in a hunt. As the Great Lent approached, the local residents planned to celebrate it with grandeur. Consequently, everyone was anticipating a significant sacrifice, which, according to some, the land itself needed. The main heroine took part in organizing the hunt, assisting the local hunters in the preparations for the event. Meanwhile, the guest admired the horses in the stable. She put on a charming display since her beloved was nearby. Observing that Lady Evans took a liking to the horse, the Lord's daughter kindly bestowed it upon her. It was evident that the girl was not merely interested in the horses themselves or the noble gesture of the main heroine, but rather in the archer's reaction to her admiration of the horses. She sought to impress the man. A little later, Karen checked the hunter's readiness for the upcoming event. She inquired about the presence of traps, of which there were plenty. While attempting to enter the carriage, the girl stumbled and nearly fell to the ground. She was promptly caught by the novel's protagonist, who came to her aid, as he had done in past lives. The man effortlessly aided the young lady in climbing inside the carriage, and then he himself sat across from her. This surprised the lady, as she was convinced the marksman would ride on horseback with the bride. It turned out that the man had valid reasons for not doing so and felt no shame in refusing the daughter of the moneylender. Unexpectedly, their conversation shifted to the weather. Raymond revealed his fondness for all seasons except winter. The main heroine immediately understood what he meant. She scarcely noticed the biting cold, spending the entire winter season in the warmth of the manor. However, for ordinary people and soldiers, it was not so straightforward. The recent war, in which the protagonist of the novel had participated, was waged purely for the benefit of the aristocrats of society, and it did not bring any assistance to ordinary people. Evans the moneylender grew rich by selling weapons, and for other nobles, the war became an opportunity to place bets on the fate of the common soldiers in battle. Yet, for the true participants of this war, those who fell victim to the greed and hypocrisy of the aristocracy, everything proved to be much more complicated. The acclaimed hero of the war was always haunted by the cold, following the events on the battlefield. From the perpetual snow, he even contemplated ending his own life. In despair, he believed that winter would never end. For this reason, in the girl's past lives, she found herself drawn to the color of her lover's hair, reminiscent of flames. Now, the main heroine remembered every word the man had previously uttered, thus understanding perfectly what he meant and what he desired to hear. She expressed her respect for the fallen knights of the war and thanked the marksman for his efforts. In doing so, she hoped to dispel the suspicious gaze of the novel's protagonist and seize the opportunity to get closer to him. To kill. She could no longer believe in the man's positive intentions, just as he could not trust her actions. Unexpectedly, the marksman took an interest in the girl's benefactor. He somehow knew that the main heroine supported the son of a slain bandit, sending him a whole gold coin every month. As for the Lord's daughter, she simply redeemed the body of the boy's father to utilize it in an experiment, as mentioned earlier. Immediately, she feigned the embodiment of innocence, justifying her actions with a belief in love and a fight against evil. The main hero of the novel was surprised by such a response, but quickly refuted any goodness in this deed. Benevolent intentions paved the path to hell. Karen merely played her role for the man, hoping to gain his trust and later mercilessly take his life. In the heart of the forest, the servants prepared for the upcoming event, while the hunters set traps and inspected their guns. Upon arriving at the location, the guest expressed disapproval of the main heroine for the presumed flirtation with her beloved in the carriage on the way here. Soon, on the final day of the festivities, Lady Evans was to be engaged to the protagonist of the novel. Then she could finally exhale and release her jealousy towards others. Noticing the arrival of the entourage, she hurried to meet the two individuals suspected of engaging in flirtation. She was curious about the subject of their conversation, but the truth surprised the young lady greatly. The main heroine sought clarification on the details of the selected hunting weapons. The guest realized that her knowledge of this pursuit was limited to the fact that it was a man's affair, one that should be admired. Suddenly, the daughter of the Lord herself interrupted the girl's musings, personally approaching to converse with Isella. She explained to the guest that due to the presence of numerous dangerous bears in the forests surrounding the estate, which both hunters and estate residents had encountered, it was necessary to set traps to prevent the predators from attacking people. Naturally, this frightened the young lady as she did not wish to fall into the clutches of the forest monster. However, the mistress of these lands reassured her that the campsite they had established was safe. Suddenly, Lady Evans decided to display false bravery, and thus forged ahead, disregarding the protests of the main heroine. Just a step away from stepping into a trap, Karen halted the guest with words warning her of the imminent danger of being injured by animal snares. This horrified the girl, as she could have lost her leg in an instant. In a sudden turn of events, the moneylender's daughter noticed a peculiar reaction from the servants to what had transpired. They regarded the estate's guest with disdain. Falsely concerned about Lady Evans' well-being, the main heroine strongly suggested that she take some rest. In the next instant, they were already seated in the carriage, and the young lady unfastened the guest's corset, allowing her to breathe freely. Such dexterity of the Lord's daughter greatly astonished the second lady, who, by her standards, believed that ladies of even small territories could not perform such tasks and often relied on their servants. Soon, she was even more amazed to realize that Karen felt no discomfort in the absence of her personal maid, with whom she had spent over 8 years together. For this reason, she decided to inquire about the situation with the new maid of the estate's mistress. In response, she received entirely commonplace words stating that the maid was fulfilling her duties. The moneylender's daughter failed to comprehend how effortlessly the main heroine overlooked the servants. It astonished her that the kind-hearted Karen showed no concern over Nancy's disappearance. 3 days later, the main heroine's fiancé asked her if she was saddened by Raymond's engagement to the guest. Instead of answering, the girl redirected the question and even went on to inform him that she would be helping with the preparations for Lady Evans' wedding tomorrow. During their conversation, she requested the key to her father's study, explaining her desire as a means to view her deceased mother's portrait. The clergyman was compelled to hand over the key, as she was the mistress of this estate. He worried that nothing untoward would occur. Meanwhile, Karen planned to sneak into her father's study while he was away to gather details about his involvement in the disappearance of bodies following the murder. Shortly after, the girl found herself in the carriage on her way to the town, accompanied by her servants, her personal maid and Bowen. She understood that their presence could cause problems, so she decided to visit her former teacher before proceeding further. Upon arriving at the woman's house, the main heroine engaged in conversation while sipping tea. The teacher spoke of Karen's mother, who was a beauty, thus everyone was greatly surprised when she suddenly decided to become the father's wife. The main heroine visited her former teacher merely to escort the others and calmly return home, intending to secretly explore her father's study. Unexpectedly, the woman posed a peculiar question. She inquired about the Lord's daughter's relationship with her fiancé, specifically whether they were still as good as before. Karen responded without thinking, assuring that everything was fine. But of course, she was taken aback by Dyer's question. Shortly thereafter, she hastened to leave her teacher's place. However, she was instantly stopped. The woman claimed that marrying Dulan was dangerous, as he had promised to kill the girl. 10 years ago, on the day of the engagement with her suitor, the main heroine locked him in a room with hunting dogs that she had previously set upon him. The girl was caught holding the door closed, where the maltreatment of young Dulan was taking place. Due to the interest of the boy's parents in the position of the main heroine's father, they did not investigate the situation, and even the Lord himself did not want to get involved. For this reason, they entrusted Karen's punishment to her teacher when she brought the girl to apologize to her fiancé. Instead of remorse, the main heroine asked him to die. This shocked both the woman and the wounded child. Thus, he swore to God that he would indeed kill his bride. Karen was unaware of these childhood events, as they were not mentioned in the novel, and the character appeared much later. Despite hearing it, she pretended that the situation meant nothing to her. Unexpectedly, she realized that the woman's earlier question had been a test of the main heroine's memory. She had failed, as she remembered nothing. From early childhood, the main heroine stood apart from other children due to her beauty and intelligence, but one day she fell seriously ill. The girl's mother tried to care for and comfort her child, doing her best to reassure her. However, the young lady began asking peculiar questions about the meaning of life, which frightened the adults. It all began when Lord's estate hired a maid named Nancy, despite the teacher's concerns. The gypsy woman was appointed as the girl's personal attendant, despite the teacher's objections, which troubled her greatly. One day, she noticed the new maid giving the Lord's daughter medication without a doctor's prescription. According to Nancy's words, it was the only thing that helped the girl with her seizures and vivid imagination. Everything that happened horrified Dyer. This marked the beginning of a series of peculiarities that befell the child. Initially, her senses dulled, and later, she began to forget loved ones and important memories from her life altogether. When the main heroine's mother succumbed to illness, she continued to worry about her beloved daughter, despite the danger posed by the gypsy woman. The mother stubbornly believed in her treatment, which seemed to benefit the child. Even when the Lord's wife passed away, the daughter couldn't recall who she truly was. This fact alone failed to convince the Lord to remove the dangerous attendant from his daughter. Instead, he merely dismissed the teacher herself. The teacher persistently pleaded to cease administering the strange medicines to the main heroine. She understood the peril it posed to the child. Upon finishing her account, the woman inquired about Karen's well-being. After hearing all of this, the main heroine was fine. The Lord's daughter doubted whether she could trust the woman's words about her personality being manipulated through gypsy magic. One thing she knew for certain, and she voiced it to the teacher. Her father knew that the main heroine had lost her sanity in her childhood, confirming everything else was impossible due to the absence of the deceased attendant. Upon hearing this, Dyer seemed to lose her sanity. She began to beseech the girl, urging her to implore the Lord to rehire her. The main heroine couldn't comprehend such an overt desire, or the reason why the woman had languished in a dilapidated hut all this time. Was it truly to have a chance to return to the estate? Suddenly, the assumption slipped from the girl's lips. The woman wanted to assume the position of the Lord's spouse. Dyer was shocked by these words, but she didn't deny them. She fell to her knees, imploring Karen, hoping that she would believe in her good intentions and desire to help her. However, it was in vain. The Lord's daughter couldn't trust the woman, and now she couldn't trust herself either. She struggled with the heavy thought that she had been mad all this time. Without much hesitation, the girl declared that she refused to accept such a turn of events. Drawing a firearm, she confessed to all the committed murders before the woman and then shot her. At that moment, Bowen, the attendant, entered the room, seemingly unfazed by the committed murder. He requested the girl to leave and wait in the carriage while he took care of the body, and eradicated all traces after the killing. Inside the carriage, the main heroine could only ponder upon the words spoken by the deceased teacher. She doubted if her life was merely a product of a deranged imagination. She found herself completely entangled in the truth and also realized that repentance awaited her before her fiancé, and the noose for her committed sins. She even found solace in the latter, as it held the hope of putting an end to her life forever. Soon enough, the attendant returned with 2 large suitcases containing lifeless bodies. He not only cleansed everything after Dyer's death but also took the life of her attendant. Following this, the girl posed her inquiries to Bowen. Did he dispose of the gypsy woman's body? The response was affirmative. The main heroine had found a person who cleaned up crime scenes for her and disposed of bodies. She was curious about why he dismembered the first victim's body. Before the girl could hear the answer, the main hero of the novel unexpectedly intervened in their conversation. He had come because he noticed the Lord's carriage and wished to join them. Karen responded with a lie, claiming she had come to the town for a shopping trip. This also served as a justification for the presence of 2 large suitcases in the carriage. During the conversation, the marksman desperately tried to ascertain the topic of their discussion. However, the girl remained resolute, refusing to provide any response, even a fabricated one. Afterward, the man boldly inquired about the contents of the suitcases, but all he received were evasive and meaningless words. Raymond suspected something sinful in the girl's affairs and openly declared it. She did not deny it but diverted the conversation by stating it concerned the secret of a person's birth. Soon, the main heroine hurriedly bid farewell to the man in order to head to the estate. Once there, her first destination was her father's study. Gazing at the portrait of her beautiful mother, she contemplated how the unfortunate woman had met her demise. Her musing was interrupted by the arrival of the Lord. He informed her of his knowledge regarding the teacher's death, as well as the previous attendant's demise. His sole concern was the financial implications that he would have to face. The girl knew well that the attendant would not remain silent about Karen Hayer's committed crimes, and therefore, she honestly confessed her guilt to her father in the murder of the 2 women. This is the end of the first part. If you would like me to make a second part of this manhwa, please support the channel by giving it a like and leaving a comment. Additionally, please subscribe to the channel to stay updated on new videos.